After the crash landing on a deserted planet, the survivors of the interstellar spaceshipper soon realize they need to find ways to survive. During exploration, they discover signs of a total eclipse and encounter predatory creatures just waking up to begin hunting. Could they escape the planet despite being cornered and eaten? Let's find the answer in the movie. In a faraway future, cryogenically preserved passengers are waiting for the Hunter Gratzner spacecraft to land on Earth. One of the passengers is a Muslim priest named Abu. He is accompanying 3 young pilgrims to New Mecca, whose names are Jack, Shaza, and Zeke. Along with them are the wealthy merchant Paris and the police officer William Johns, the escort of the violent criminal Richard Riddick. They are deep in space when the spacecraft is suddenly hit by a swarm of micrometeoroids, damaging some parts of the machine and killing the captain. As a result, the ship's first officer Owens and the docking pilot Carol Fry quickly take actions to deal with the emergency. Fry immediately takes over control of the spacecraft and makes rapid preparations to touch down on a nearby planet. She purges the ballast as the falling spacecraft can no longer support heavy loads during a drift. But that is not enough, so she plans to dump the passenger section to drop off more loads. Seeing she is going to pull the switch, Owens becomes alarmed and rushes toward Fry to stop her from purging again. Realizing that she almost killed a number of people, Fry feels guilty, but she has lost control of the spacecraft, and there is nothing she can do to prevent it from crashing into the planet's surface. Consequently, several passengers are killed, and only Paris, Johns, Riddick, Imam, and his 3 young pilgrims survive the crash. Meanwhile, Fry finds Owens suffering from a lethal injury due to the spacecraft's impact on the ground. She tries to save him by pulling out the handle that pierced nearly to his heart, but Owens tells her to stop and asks her to find medical equipment. So, Fry commands the survivors to get the anastophene in the medlock, only to find that nothing is left after the accident. She then orders the survivors to get outside and leave her alone with Owens, who dies after a few moments. A while later, the survivors call Fry to see the outside, and she is surprised to discover that they are on a deserted planet. All they can see before them is only sand and rocks without any signs of life. Afterward, Fry goes to check on Riddick, who is now restrained inside the wrecked spacecraft and guarded by Johns. She learns that Riddick has killed many people before and escaped from a maximum security chamber, and that Johns intends to keep him locked up until they can find a place to stay. But once Fry and Johns leave, Riddick breaks the chains and fetters attached to his hands and feet. He flees the spacecraft, and Johns becomes frustrated when finding out Riddick escaped. Because of that, Johns gathers the survivors to assist him capture the criminal, but except for Riddick, who is a potential threat to their safety, they also have to find water as soon as possible. Otherwise, all of them will die here because of the lack of water. So they are divided into 2 groups. One group is heading out to find Riddick and water, while the other stays to bury the dead passengers. While wandering, John shouts and orders them to cease moving after hearing strange noises nearby, fearing it may be Riddick. Afterward, he follows where the noise comes from and checks the perimeter. He looks through a telescope to see whether Riddick is in the distance, but then he spots a human movement out of his peripheral vision. So, Johns quickly points the gun at the person behind his back, which turns out to be Fry. Johns apologizes and then tells her that he finds no sign of Riddick but has stumbled onto some trees. Therefore, Johns and Fry go to the trees with Imam and 3 young pilgrims, only to find that it is a communal graveyard and the trees are snags. Still, they explore the area, hoping to find Riddick or water. When they are searching, the young pilgrims find a robotic toy submerged in sand, so they call Fry. Eventually, they find an abandoned geological research settlement, and Imam discovers a water well and its source. Furthermore, Fry tracks down a dropship and informs the others about it. But upon getting inside, she finds it lacks the ability to take flight. Back in the ship, Zeke mistakenly fires his gun toward another survivor, thinking he is Riddick. So, he buries the poor man on the excavated soil, but stops short when he finds a hole in the ground. When Zeke uses his flashlight to check what's inside, an unknown creature suddenly attacks him. Therefore, he fires the gun to the creature, but each shot leaves severe scratches on his body. Then Shasa, who is waiting for Zeke, hears the gunfire and dashes in that direction to see whether he's okay. But when she finally gets there, Zeke has already gone missing, and she sees Riddick standing nearby with a sharp snag. Afraid that Shaza will blame him for the murder, Riddick tries to escape but unexpectedly gets trapped by Johns. He falls to the ground, and Johns takes his chance to overpower him, removing his shades. In fact, Riddick cannot see under the sunlight due to the extreme sensitivity of his surgically enhanced eyes to light. In this way, Johns recaptures him easily and takes him back to the ship. A while later, Fry visits Riddick and asks if he killed Zeke and buried him. At first, Riddick is reluctant to speak up, but when Fry threatens to leave him on the ship until he dies, he reveals that it is a dangerous predatory creature that killed Zeke and dragged him into the hole. He then suggests that they should dig deeper into the hole to find Zeke. After the conversation, Fry tells the survivors about her discussion with Riddick and orders them to assist her as she gets inside the hole. Once inside, Fry discovers several flying creatures hiding in the darkness and Zeke's remains scattered in the cave. Frightened, she attempts to escape through a hollow, but the rope is already stretched. Because of that, Fry shouts for help, and the survivors help her escape from hostile creatures by pulling her up. Now that they realize Riddick's words are true, Johns returns to the ship and makes a deal with him. He asks Riddick to help them escape the planet in exchange for removing the chains in his hands and feet. Riddick accepts the offer and soon joins the team to explore the planet. Later, the team returns to the dropship with their power cell, with which they will activate its power. Fry theorizes that the dropship can still operate, so she plans to fix it, but they will need to adapt the electrical appropriately for it to work out. After a while, Fry successfully gets enough power for a sys check from the power cell, but she points out that they still need 5 power cells to launch the dropship. In light of this, Shaza volunteers to find the power cells, and Johns agrees to the plan while also reminding her to contact him if she runs into any difficulties. As they talk, Johns notices that Riddick loses out of his sight, so he excuses himself from Shaza. He finds Riddick in the coring room and sends him back to the dropship. Back to the geological research settlement, the survivors drink the booze as they rest after a tiring day. However, Fry seems uncomfortable as she observes the facility where they are staying. She is confused why the previous inhabitants abandoned the ship before leaving. Johns assumes that maybe this ship is a disposable skiff. Riddick, however, disputes all of their hypotheses, insisting that the locals must have been exterminated by the same creatures that took Zeke's life. Suddenly, Imam cuts in mid-sentence to report that one of his young pilgrims has gone missing. Hearing this, they quickly go to the coring room, only to find the young pilgrim dead and eaten by the predaceous creatures. After the tragedy, they realize that the predaceous creatures are sensitive to daylight and can only hunt for their prey in darkness. Therefore, John suggests only sticking to daylight to keep themselves alive. Afterward, when everyone leaves the core room, Fry finds some coring samples that are dated 22 years ago. According to the samples, Fry finds out more information and goes to the room where she discovers an orrery. Upon using the orrery, she learns that there happened an eclipse before, indicating that the former inhabitants were hunted and murdered by the predatory creatures during the eclipse. Unexpectedly, she finds that the next eclipse is coming to the planet very soon, so she tells the survivors to work on the dropship as quickly as possible. However, Johns tells her not to panic because they are still finding more power cells and points out that Riddick might hijack it once the dropship is ready to launch. He reveals to Fry that Riddick once hijacked a ship and killed the pilot to launch it. The following day, Fry continues to repair the dropship when suddenly she sees Riddick enter. so she asks him if what Johns told her is true. Surprised, he admits it, but also reveals that Johns is only a mercenary, not an actual law enforcement officer. He also says that Johns has the drugs that could save Owens, but never thought of giving one. Much as angry she is when hearing this, there are more urgent things to do, so she has no time to interrogate Johns. After talking with Riddick, Fry gets outside when she and the survivors suddenly discover the moon is about to have an eclipse. Because of that, Shaza suggests getting everything they need on the crash ship before the eclipse finally sets. She quickly engines the solar-powered sand truck along with the survivors. Once they reach the crash ship's location, they hastily salvage all the power cells while Paris separates to get his things. While picking up, they notice the planet is covered in darkness, which means that the eclipse finally begins. In this case, the solar-powered sand truck can no longer be operated, which causes the survivors to get stuck on the crash ship. As the darkness envelops the place, the predaceous creatures emerge from the ground to attack. The survivors quickly flee the crash ship to get into the hull. As everybody is about to get inside, Shaza fails to survive when the predaceous creatures attack her. After watching Shaza's death, Paris orders other members to get inside, but Fry and Riddick remain outside. Riddick removes his spectacles and glances around the predaceous creature's den, illuminating the area to scare the beasts away. As they enter, the creatures are trying to breach the hull and attack them again. So, Riddick makes a hole to get them into another side so they can hide and plan how to return to the geological research settlement. Upon setting foot through the darkness, a young pilgrim is in danger and Riddick tries to save him using his heightened sight. But the young pilgrim does not listen and runs away, causing him to get killed. Back to their hideout, Fry still sticks to the plan of getting the 4 power cells back to the dropship. Johns disagrees with Fry's idea and attempts to hurt her, but Riddick immediately threatens him with a sharp snag. Because of that, Johns returns to his seat and Fry continues to discuss the plans, wherein she suggests that Riddick can lead them to the crash ship using his heightened sight. Soon, Riddick becomes the group leader and safely gets them to the crash ship. They quickly salvage its parts, activate its power, and construct a defensive rig out of its lightning rods. Afterward, Riddick takes the group on a brisk walk back to the dropship and uses his heightened sight to protect them. However, the young pilgrim Jack suddenly picks up the power cell part that fell from the cart. Fry tries to stop her, but she gets separated from them already, causing the predaceous creature to almost kill her. Meanwhile, the frightened Paris crawls away from the ground and accidentally destroys the defensive rig. As a result, the predaceous creatures devour him. Now that lighting rods are destroyed, the group activates their flares and uses them as their last protection. Riddick tells the group that they can't get through the canyon while Jack is menstruating because it could attract predators. But when the group continues to walk, John suddenly suggests to Riddick to take Jack as bait while he keeps others off his back. Pissed off, Riddick challenges him to a fight while Fry orders the rest of the group to move. Riddick slashes John's back with his sharp snag, distracted the attracted predators with the smell of blood. Soon, Riddick reunites with them and they enter the canyon together. However, they spot several predaceous creatures surrounding them from above, so Riddick orders them to run faster as he will pull the power cells while running. Upon crossing the canyon, the rainfall begins to pour, making their improvised torches fade. At this time, Imam's last young pilgrim is taken away by a creature. Because of that, Riddick hides the remaining group members in a cave to keep them safe, while he, on the other hand, continues crossing the canyon with the power cells. Later, Riddick safely reaches the geological research settlement and starts powering the ship. Meanwhile, the remaining group discovers bioluminescent worms inside the cave, making them use it as their light and put them all in one bottle. Afterward, Fry volunteers to get outside and check on Riddick and the dropship. She then reaches the facility in no time and finds out that Riddick is about to launch the skiff without them. So, Fry blocks the way to restrain Riddick from starting up the engine and pleads with him to rescue Imam and Jack in the cave. However, Riddick refuses and somehow offers a deal, saying that she should come with him and leave the two behind. This offer at first shakes her determination to save other members, But Fry remembers how Owen stopped her purging the passenger section before they crashed into the planet, and she still feels guilty about it. So she cries in frustration and says she must go back for them, even though it might take her life. Because of that, Riddick is finally persuaded and returns to the cave with Fry. With Riddick's heightened sight and bioluminescent lights, they safely get back to the dropship. Fortunately, Riddick is separated from the group and gets attacked by some creatures. He gets injured in the right leg, which prevents him from walking properly. Meanwhile, Fry comes back for him after hearing his screams, but she is stabbed and abducted by a predatory beast. Leaving him no choice, Riddick returns to the dropship and starts engaging the engines, but stops when he realizes something. He turns off the engine and waits for the predaceous creatures to surround them. Once the beasts cluster together, Riddick activates the engine and sets them on fire, killing them instantly. Finally, the remaining group survives and escapes from the deserted planet. But before they head back to Earth, Jack asks Riddick about what they are going to say about him, who is still a criminal, when they get questioned by the authorities. The movie ends with Riddick answering that Jack and Imam should tell the authorities that the criminal Riddick has died somewhere on the planet.